Her name was Gülden Johnny. She had just turned 15, a student at Edirne Vocational and Technical Anatolian High School in Turkey. To her family, she was the sunshine in their home, always smiling, always talking, always there to listen when someone needed a shoulder. They called her their treasure, and they meant it. But it wasn't just her kindness that stood out. Gülden was beautiful, bright eyes, a glowing smile. So what could possibly go wrong? But something did go wrong, horribly wrong. And in today's case, we're going to talk about how justice might have failed her because of the age of criminal responsibility in Turkey. This is the murder of Gülden Johnny. It happened on April 5th, 2025, which is not long ago. The whole country was shaken when news broke. A teenage girl had been found dead in the garden of a high school in Edirne. That evening, a local from the Çavuşbey neighborhood stumbled across the body. He immediately called emergency services. Police and paramedics rushed to the scene. When they got there, it was already too late. Gülden was lying on the ground, covered in blood. Her eyes were still open. The fear and pain she must have felt in her final moments, it was all still there on her face. She had multiple stab wounds. Someone had attacked her with a knife or some kind of sharp weapon. Her clothes were intact. There were no signs of sexual assault, but what happened to her was brutal and senseless. Her body was taken to the Trakya University Medical Faculty Hospital morgue for further examination. They found her school bag nearby, along with her ID. That's how they confirmed it was Gülden, 15 years old, a student at the very school where her body was found. The story hit the public hard, not just because of the violence, but because where it happened. She was killed at school, a place that's supposed to be safe. Who would do something like this? And more importantly, who could get close enough to her without her raising the alarm? Because based on everything we know, Gülden didn't fight back. She didn't scream. And that suggests she knew the killer, maybe even trusted them. So who was Gülden Johnny, and what happened on that day that ended her life? Gülden Johnny had just turned 15. Some people say she was almost 16, but really she was still just a girl. A bright, warm, sweet girl who lived in Edirne and went to Edirne Vocational and Technical Anatolian High School. Her friends described her as a ray of sunshine, always smiling, always humble, the kind of person who could make anyone feel comfortable. She made friends easily, not because she tried, but because she cared. She listened, she laughed, she was a friendly girl. And she came from a loving home. Her parents weren't rich, but they were strong, united. Her mom and dad poured their hearts into raising her well, and it showed. Even though everyone around her spoiled her, Johnny was grounded. She tried not to be a burden to anyone. She stood on her own feet, quietly making her way through life with kindness and grace. But how could something so violent, so cruel happen to someone so good? Who would want to hurt her? As much as Gülden glowed, her light drew in more than just admiration. People noticed her, a lot of people, and one of them was a boy her age. His name was Enis Ayaz. He was 15 too, just a regular kid from the outside. He liked video games, hung out with his friends, laughed about dumb things online. After school, he helped his dad run a small barber shop, learning to cut hair, sweep the floors, maybe handle a bit of money at the till. On paper, there was nothing unusual about this boy. But not everything is visible on the surface. Enis and Johnny went to the same school, but they weren't close, not even acquaintances. They didn't share classes, didn't hang in the same circles, didn't have the same interests. Still, like most people at school, Enis knew of her. He'd see her walking down the corridor, maybe hear her name in conversations, and slowly, that harmless admiration turned into something else. Obsession. he started watching her quietly from a distance. And that wasn't enough anymore. He didn't just want to see her. He wanted her, to have her, not as a girlfriend, not even as a friend, just for himself. And what's even more disturbing is that he hinted at what he was about to do. Just 3 days before Johnny died, Ennis sent a message to his friends in a group chat. And it sounded like a joke at the time. Cryptic, weird, but easy to dismiss. He wrote, "Soon I will go to prison and be a boss." Someone replied with, "Do you have money though?" And Ennis just laughed it off and said, "Bring me underwear." They all thought it was just him being weird and dramatic. But it wasn't. April 5th, 2025. It was a regular day. Johnny told her parents she had to stop by the school for something. Just a quick visit to meet a friend. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. Her father remembers her smiling when she said goodbye, and that would be the last time he saw her. In fact, the truth was, according to the indictment later revealed, just 1 day before the murder, Ennis confronted with a friend of Johnny. And he didn't stop there. He went to this friend's house with his family, issued threats, and then set up a meeting with Johnny herself. So just like that, the day came, and he was waiting. She walked into the school courtyard that afternoon. He was standing alone, looking nervous, watching her walk toward him. And he had gotten what he wanted. She was there, and she was alone. After meeting her, he led her to a quiet spot near a workshop tucked behind the school. For nearly an hour, the two talked. What started as a simple meetup turned into something else entirely. Gülden and Johnny thought it was going to be a regular conversation. Maybe Ennis wanted to talk, maybe clear something up, maybe even confess a crush. We will never know what sparked an argument, but it quickly escalated. Witnesses later said the two were seen in the school courtyard, arguing, not just talking, yelling to each other. Things got heated, and before Johnny could realize what was happening, Ennis snapped. He pulled out a knife he brought with him. Yes, brought with him, which shows he already had plans, and drove it straight into her chest. Blood spattered everywhere, but instead of panicking or running, Ennis smiled. He didn't stop with one stab. He kept going, stab after stab, her chest, her stomach, her neck, more than 20 times. Some say over 30. It was a brutal, rage-filled attack, and it ended just as quickly as it began. Johnny died right there, on the ground, her eyes still open. She didn't even have the chance to scream. The attack was so sudden, so violent, that her body gave out before her brain could even process what was happening. And Ennis just stood there, looking down at her body, expressionless, maybe even satisfied. Then he turned around and walked away. The route back home wasn't crowded. Ennis knew the area well, so he made sure to avoid places where people might notice the blood all over his clothes. Somewhere along the way, he picked up his phone and called his dad. He told him everything. And what happened next is almost just as shocking as the crime itself. His father didn't tell him to call the police. He didn't drive him to the station. He told Ennis to come straight home. And when he got there, blood-soaked and emotionless, his family didn't freak out. They didn't panic. They pulled him inside, told him to take a shower, then washed his bloody clothes. His parents and his relatives, they helped him clean up, not just himself, but the crime. Ennis, clean and calm, then headed to his dad's barber shop, as if nothing had happened. He cut customers' hair, greeted them, made small talk. It was chilling. His whole family acted as if a young life lost didn't even matter. And Ennis, just like that, he simply moved on. Back at home, his family got to work on the rest of the cover-up. They found the knife, the murder weapon, and tossed it into the river. They destroyed Johnny's phone too, erasing any trace of their communication. They were trying to make it all disappear. The blood, the connection, the motive, everything. And they didn't call the police. And they didn't grieve. They were fully focused on protecting him from what he had done. 6 hours later, around evening, someone was passing by the school courtyard, and they saw something odd, something red. Curious, they stepped closer, and then they saw the body. It definitely didn't look like an accident, and it didn't look like a fight either. It looked like a murder. They called emergency services, 112, and police and paramedics were quickly dispatched. At first, officers thought it might be a case of self-harm or a freak accident, but when they arrived, they were met with a scene they wouldn't forget. Her body was marked by multiple stab wounds. It was a homicide. Investigators locked down the scene. They collected blood samples, searched for fingerprints, and scanned the area for any clues. Then they checked the CCTV, and that's when everything started to come together. One of the cameras had captured something. Gülden Johnny arguing with the boy around her age in the courtyard. That was their first solid lead. They traced the boy's face, ran it through school records, and they found him, Enis Ayaz. When officers arrived at his home, the family played dumb. They said Enis had been helping his father at the barber shop all day, that he hadn't even left the shop. But the CCTV footage didn't lie. He was at the school. He was with Gülden, and she never walked out alive. The next day, April 6, her funeral was held at Akmesjid Mosque in the Yıldırım Hacı Saraf neighborhood. And it was packed. Dozens of people came. Some were classmates, some were neighbors, and many were just people who heard the story and couldn't believe what had happened. During the noon prayer, Gülden's father, Sami Johnny, could barely stand. He sat slumped over in grief, silent, pale, and shattered. Her mother and other family members wept the entire day. The pain was so heavy. Meanwhile, back at the station, 15-year-old Enis Ayaz was taken into custody. From the beginning, he insisted he was her boyfriend. Some reports say he claimed to be her ex-boyfriend, saying they'd argued and that he killed her accidentally during a drunken rage. But Gülden's family had a very different version. Her father, Sami, went public, fast. He told reporters that Enis was never Gülden's boyfriend. He said this was someone who was obsessed with her, a boy who couldn't handle rejection. And now he was using lies to paint himself as something more than he ever was to her. Despite the brutal nature of the crime, Enis's identity was protected by Turkey's juvenile protection laws. His face and name were blurred in most news reports. That angered a lot of people, especially once it came out that his family had helped him cover it up. Washed his bloody clothes, hid the knife, destroyed Gülden's phone, and then they told police they had no idea what happened. To many, it felt like Enis and his entire family were being shielded. And when the media coverage started fading away, people started asking why. Why wasn't this being talked about more? Why was the trial so quiet? Rumors began to spread. Maybe Enis's family had connections. Maybe someone wanted this case to disappear. The first court hearing was held at the Edirne 3rd Heavy Criminal Court. Enis didn't appear in person. He joined remotely through Segbiz, a video conferencing system used in Turkish courtrooms. There, he was given the chance to explain himself. He said he regretted what he'd done. He claimed it was a heat-of-the-moment thing, that he didn't mean to kill her, that it all happened so fast, that he couldn't believe the girl he loved was dead because of him. The hearing was short. After a brief recess, the court decided to postpone it. Outside the courtroom, Gülden's parents spoke to the press. Her mother, Zehra, and her father, Sami, made it clear they weren't buying Enis's story. They called for the harshest punishment possible. They wanted real justice, not just for their daughter, but for all families who'd lost someone and felt ignored by the system. The second hearing was set for September 26, 2025. Until then, Enis would remain in detention. The prosecution argued that this was premeditated murder. They had the group chat logs, the message Enis sent days before, joking about going to prison and becoming a boss. They said he brought a knife, that it was planned. This wasn't a moment of rage, it was an execution of his plan. They sought a sentence of 18 to 24 years. But because Enis was a minor, the maximum penalty he could receive would still be less than if he were an adult. And that outraged the public even more. Feeling ignored, Gülden's family decided they couldn't stay quiet. They helped organize a public march. It wasn't just for Gülden, it was for every young victim who deserved justice. Over 100 people gathered in the Yildirim Haja Saraf neighborhood. They carried signs, held photos, chanted prayers. One by one, the names of young victims were shouted together by the crowd. Gülden Jani, just 15, murdered at her school. Duru Pakarda, shot and killed in Edirne. Muhammed Mutluay, killed in a gang conflict in Küçükçekmece. Mattia Ahmet Mingutsi, stabbed in Kadıköy. Each name was a life lost, a family broken, and a reminder of why they were marching. At the gathering, each victim's family spoke, one after another. And when it was her turn, Gülden's sister, Nurhan Aluzrek, spoke not only for their family, but for many others. She argued that the juvenile protection laws, while created to support rehabilitation, can sometimes leave victims' families without closure. In Turkey, like many other countries, the law treats minors very differently from adults. If you're between 15 and 18 years old and you commit murder, you cannot be sentenced to life in prison. The maximum you can get is 24 years, and you might be eligible for release after serving about 2/3 of that. That means someone could be out in as little as 16 years, even for a brutal, premeditated murder. And in some cases, it's even less. There have been cases where teenage killers serve 12 to 15 years before walking free. Even in high-profile murders, the sentences often stop far short of what victims' family feel is justice. It feels like the law values the killer's future more than the victims. And that's why you saw the march. It was a demand for laws that don't let age become a shield for even the most calculated violence. As of now, Enis Ayaz remains in detention, awaiting the next court date in September. And public reaction remains mixed. Some point to deeper issues, mental health, home life, lack of emotional maturity. Others highlight the planning involved, the chat messages, and how calmly Enis behaved after the crime, suggesting it wasn't impulsive at all. There are also concerns about the role of the family. While they claim to know nothing about the murder, reports say they helped clean up evidence and dispose of the weapon. But so far, there have been no public charges filed against them. The legal process is still unfolding. So where does this leave us? How do we give young offenders a second chance without erasing the victims? How do we balance rehabilitation with real accountability? And if the law can't give closure, who will speak for those who can't speak for themselves? Let me know your thoughts below. And that is all for today. Thanks for watching.